So I have pretty much worked for every known studio, HBO to Cinemax to Warner Brothers to Fox to Universal. And so the biggest struggle I think a lot of agencies have is that the client comes and says, I want all of these features and I want it to work like this, and this. I want this and this timeline. And I've got this much budget. Pixel's got 35 people that work here. We work with the clients on budgeting and timeline. We're pretty progressive when it comes to that. It's one of those things where you retain clients when you deliver a good product.
Calling from today?
We're located in Austin, Texas. We were previously located, and when I say we, I'm talking about Bad Pixel. We were located in Los Angeles, specifically in Orange County. We were based out of Irvine, but I've lived all over LA. But we moved to Austin in 2020 and haven't looked back. So
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm calling from San Francisco. We're not too far away from each other. I have never
nice.
been to Texas, actually. How is it down there?
Um, Let me see. I'll be political about this. By the way, I love San Francisco. It's one of our favorite places to go, or my wife and I, and also Napa Valley. Big fans of that area. But Texas is interesting. It is gigantic, and I think that there's a lot of great things here in Texas that a lot of people don't know exist. But Austin specifically is really great. I mean, I think it's one of the best, cities for a lot of, active people. You want to go be outside. You want to go out to dinner. You want to go, to the lake. We have two lakes here. We have the Colorado River wraps around downtown. So it's a very active city. And it's very interesting. The food scene here is incredible. I mean, I can tell you right now, I put Austin's food scene up against Los Angeles any day of the week. And I'm confident in saying that because my brother's a chef and my sister-in-law is a sommelier, and
Okay.
I'm a cook. And so and my wife's a foodie. So we know food. And Austin, you should definitely come check it out, man. It's cool, especially with the Formula One races here, in October.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's definitely got some international vibe here, which is really awesome. But yeah, no, I love Austin. So
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm very open. I'm not originally from the US. I'm originally from Sweden, and I moved to the US in 2018. So I'm always looking for new places to visit, even new places to move, to be honest.
yeah,
So that's awesome to hear. Well, great to meet you.
you
Before
too.
we dig in, I'll give you some context. I'm the founder of Imperial Arts, and we generally partner with B2B SaaS companies to help increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. That is
Mhm.
why we're interviewing leaders such as you and other folks at Mercedes-Benz and Cisco, and that is mainly to gain deeper insights into the market whilst providing value back in the form of this podcast.
Mhm.
Yes, today we have Christopher Clarke from Bad Pixel. This usually takes between 30 to 40 minutes. Does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, perfect.
Sweet. Well, let's get right into it.
Sure.
I understand that Bad Pixel provides brands, builds website, apps, e-commerce, and is in the design sector. Could you share some insights into your business and the role you play within it?
Sure. I am the CEO and co-founder of Bad Pixel. I have a business partner. Her name is Sheila Manzanilla. And basically, what we really focus on is custom software development. It's not just e-commerce. It's not just an iOS app or an Android app or things like that. Really, it really depends on the client and what they need. And we really look for like a high user experience bar, usability, making sure that what we're developing is going to stay relevant for at least the next 10 to 12 months, because software, as you know, can it basically goes out and denigrates itself every 10 to 12 months, and it basically is like, okay, now it's something new out there to go and play with and go and touch on and interact with. So really what our focus is to find out what those problems are the business is having, that's our client. And we say, okay, you're trying to solve, maybe retention or higher, ROI, or, higher, engagement rates and things like that. So we start identifying all of that and making sure that we not just solve it for like a phase one or a phase two, that we actually roadmap out a success path. And that's a very detailed thing that I can get into later. But one of the things I would say is that really, when you want to say what Bad Pixel does, it's mostly about custom software development with high user experience.
Wow, that's very interesting. I mean, design and product design is such a broad sector, and there's just so many different products that you touch on a daily basis, and you can essentially build anything for anyone at this point, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I guess that pertains to both mobile and desktop. So, what are kind of the current trends in the market that you see now? Where are the winds blowing, and what are you noticing?
I think the winds are blowing mostly toward mobile. I mean, I think a lot of tech leaders and people in this industry would agree with that. Because you're looking at your user base, like who's actually going to be engaging your clientele. But it also, and I want to caveat that because a lot of people just say, "Oh, it's mobile. It's going to be mobile first," and that's been a big, you know, term in the industry for many years. One thing that I would say is it really depends on the type of software you're developing. Mobile can also mean not just phones, but also tablets. Like if you're designing something for the medical industry, you're probably going to be designing something on a tablet or a form factor like that. Sometimes you're going to be designing for, a desktop, but it could still be relevant today. I don't know last time any of us have been in the doctor's office, but I was in there 2 weeks ago with the sonogram, and that was on a desktop system. It wasn't on a mobile device, but it was still, something that's still relevant today. So it depends on the application. It depends on the need and what you're trying to solve for. Sometimes you need large format, like a monitor and a desktop system. Sometimes a small format will do for like a phone or a tablet. And especially if you're, like in the restaurant industry or, kind of doing something like that, I've seen a lot more tablets being introduced there. I've seen a lot more phones being introduced there. Now, when my wife and I go out to dinner in downtown Austin, they come over and basically hand us an iPhone it's wrapped inside of a point of sale system, insert, and then you pay your bill and you're out the door. And so to say it's trending in one way or the other, I don't think it's a simple answer. And that's why I gave you the more complex answers, because it really depends on what you're trying to solve for and what that industry is using that software for. And that's really what's going to define really what your focal point is going to be on the type of software and the frame that's going to be in. So
Totally. So I'm assuming that you are a designer first and foremost, or
yes.
are you? Yes.
Mhm.
So
You give
you
it this giveaway right here. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was gonna say happy fourth, but it's been a couple days. Uh, so throughout your career, I'm sure you've loved to work on some kinds of projects and some kinds of industry, and that later evolved into something else. Where are in your career as a designer are you now, and when do you go like, yes, finally, this is the project that I've been waiting for?
oh, well, that's interesting because I've had a very long career. So I would say that I started my career a while ago, back in the early 2000s, and in the agency world. And I was lucky enough to work for a fairly large agency in Los Angeles called EMA, and their clients were all studios. So I have pretty much worked for every known studio known to man. I mean, HBO to Cinemax to Warner Brothers to Fox to whatever, Universal. I mean, the list goes on, and so when I was younger, that was like exciting because you're in the entertainment industry. So you can work on a lot of movies and a lot of different interactives and things. And then, back in that day, that's what they were called. So I'm a little dating myself a little bit here. But then as I got older and then I went through my career, um, I found that some of the things that I really like kind of gelled on was, um, there was a company in SoCal called Herbalife, and they hired me as a consultant to do their sports website. And they had like really famous athletes like Leo Messi, so he was like really popular at the time. They also had an IndyCar team. And so I thought, wow, this is really great because I get to reimagine their sports website, which was separate from their corporate site and their sales site. And I was able to sink my teeth into that. And I thought that was really fun. And I actually made no friends on the development team because I made it so hard to develop because it was just so different and new. They were just like, there's no way to do this. And it really took, this is kind of funny story, but it took them to go through 3 developers to find a developer to actually match my design pixel perfect. And he did it. He got it. He nailed it. But this was back in 2010. So nowadays, here at Bad Pixel, we've had clients from, the apparel industry, the cannabis industry, the fintech, financials, all kinds of stuff. But one of the things that's kind of come back around and almost, I guess, full circle is one of our latest clients is a media client again. And the owner of the company is a pretty famous person in Los Angeles. His name's Frank Kramer. He is one of the co-hosts of a show called Heidi and Frank. And if you are from LA or California or even parts of wherever, even in Europe, they know who he is. But he has hired us, and we've released the first phase of his new website, which is owned by Toad Hop Entertainment. It's called mycrack.com. And the joke around that is like young people saying, oh my God, that song's so good, that's my crack. And so it's like, that's the joke around it. But it's a legitimate force to be reckoned with because it's supposed to be something that goes against like websites like Spotify or even SiriusXM. And so it's going to be a really large thing. And we're in phase 2 right now. But those kind of projects where you're able to be creative, you're able to work with a client that just is trying to have a good time with things, but also solve problems and create business. That's really where I get excited. And that's what this project's about. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, you said working in design in 2010. There was no Figma back then. There was not even Sketch. You must have done everything in InDesign and Illustrator and
I did
Photoshop.
everything in Photoshop actually, and Illustrator. Yeah. So,
Wow, that's amazing. Well, how easy is it to attract and retain high quality clients in this day and age?
I would say that attracting them, if you do good work, it's not very difficult. If you're putting things out there on social and you're putting things out there on your website, I think that people see that. We get a lot of referral business. That's a big thing for us. It's not very difficult to get a client to come and talk to us. I think retention is something else. The biggest struggle I think a lot of agencies have, and I have a lot of friends that own agencies or are working in them, regardless of whether you think we're competitors or not, we all kind of talk to each other. And so one of the agency owners that I know really well, and I won't mention his name because I don't think he wants me to, but the biggest problem I think we find is that the client comes and says, I want all of these features and I want it to work like this, and this, and I want this roadmap and I want this and this timeline, and I've got this much budget. And it's like, I don't know how in the world I could even make that work, even if I was a freelancer. Bad Pixel's got 35 people that work here, and I still am like, so we try to work with the clients on budgeting and timeline and things like that. And I think we're pretty progressive when it comes to that. But retention is always around those clients that, have the budgets, they understand the timeline, they understand software development, they know it's not just a one and done or a flip a switch and there comes out a website, even though AI is out there and we can talk about that if you want to. But I think it's one of those things where you retain clients when you deliver a good product, or they have, an understanding of, okay, phase 1 is just going to be these, the MVP of what we can do, which is the most viable product that we can produce, or valuable product, depending on who and where you're talking. Some people say valuable, whatever. But the thing about it is that what are those pieces of that scope of work that is going to solve a problem, it's going to achieve a result, like a return on their investment, and then they can start adding in features as they go along the aforementioned roadmap. And so when you start looking at it from that perspective, retention is not hard, because what you do is when you talk to a client, you're saying, okay, we'll do these phases, and then that's the roadmap. And then when you do that, they know it's a long-term engagement. And we usually ask, are you looking for just a website? Are you looking for an app and then you're just going to go away? Or are you looking for a partner? And then really for us, we only really like to work for people that want to partner with us. And, and I'm not talking about like a legal partnership. I'm just talking about a long-term partnership as an agency of record kind of thing. And that's where the retention comes in. And also bringing to the table ideas that they haven't thought about, because then they see you as a value added partner. You're saying, okay, I know you want to solve these problems, but guess what? There's some other ideas you might not have thought about that we can bring to the table. And when they see that, the C levels or the director level and the manager level people that you're working for, they go, wow, this is the partner, the agency I want, because they're thinking about our value. They're thinking about how to grow us. And I don't have to stress out about a lot of things that maybe I didn't think about. So there are some ways in there. I mean, I could go on and on about this. As you can tell, I like to talk, but
That's
so
what we're here for. I mean, this is great insights. I mean, I understand the design industry a little bit. I've been a designer for quite some time as well. Before I went into growth, and I understand the retention part. There's only so much sometimes that you can do as a designer with a client, and
mhm,
once you've reached that, what do you do now? So this is a great point, and I want to kind of dig into that from
mhm.
your perspective. What When you look at the next 6 to 12 months in your business, where do you see the biggest opportunities for growth that you're really excited about, and where do you see the biggest gaps that need to be fixed?
Oh, that's a great question. I think for us, I mean, we'll tackle the growth question first, obviously. So for us, one of the things that we've talked to other agency owners about, and also looking at our growth and our over the last few years, and looking at kind of the challenges that agencies face totally. And I think one of the biggest ones, and I've heard this from multiple business leaders and owners, is if you want your agency to excel and grow, you need to be very specific about what you're offering. You can't be everything to everybody. You can't just be the toolbox. You have to be like one of the agency owners we know here in Austin. He was telling us, he's like, look, as soon as we cut off all the other things, and we just really focused on medical or something like that, or legal, or or we were the go-to agency for, like, I'll just use medical as an example, for medical. So it's like, once we did that, our numbers just went through the roof. And I was like, well, that's great, but here's the thing: how do you get into that specific industry if you don't have a current client that's doing that, or if you've never done that type of industry? So it's kind of a double-edged sword, where if you want to specialize and you're the medical agency of the world, and everybody, all the hospitals come to you, and they all love you, and you can get a lot of work out of that, that's great. But you got to at least get one of those clients first to show them what you're capable of. Because I can tell you right now, like, one of the things that we were really good at was the apparel industry, and the cannabis industry, and then also the media and entertainment industry that we're really good at. So we had those, but like, a hospital's not going to come to us and go, hey, can you design this, the software for the sonogram system, And so there's a barrier to entry there. I mean, what I would advise people to do, if you did want to specify that for the growth, is find that industry that you really are attached to. Like, you kind of similar to the question you were asking me earlier, like, what really makes you excited about coming to work every day? What makes you, want to do those projects? And it's like, if it is medical, maybe you're just, you wanted to be a doctor one day, or you just really find it fascinating, whatever it is. Then go out, have your team build out some proof of concepts, put those up on your site, saying, like, really understand what you're designing and what you're solving for, but do those POCs. And then once you have those, then you can take those to a client like a Hogue Medical or, whatever, Ascension and all those guys out there and say, okay, we can do that for that industry. And we can be that specific thing that you want, that we can fill that need for your industry. And then you can be that specialization. And that would help agencies, from what I'm told, helps them grow. We're still on the model of, we're not turning clients away. If it's apparel, if it's cannabis, it's media, whatever, we'll take it on and we'll do what we can. We did play around with the idea of specializing in medical for a little bit. That's why I keep talking about it. But anyway, so that's kind of what I would say, as far as growth goes. What we're trying to do is just keep maintaining, solving like really intricate software problems from a website to app, and making sure that we get clients in that are really kind of saying, okay, you know what, we have a complex system. And an example of that would be, we have a B2C model and a B2B model within the same, company that you're putting out there. So in other words, you've got customers that are coming in that are like you and me, everybody, everyday people. And then you're selling also to another business that's providing you an asset or something or a service. And you need all of that housed in one website or one, app. And so that to me is really exciting, because that is super challenging to figure out that, especially if, now here's the one, if the consumer can interact with the other business that's your vendor, and then those two worlds collide, and you want to talk about some crazy like user flows, it's nuts, but it's great and it's a lot of fun. And I think what we really specialize in, and I think it's where our growth is going to be. Is like, I think our new website that we're working on right now is really going to talk about hyper complex systems, such as what I just kind of mentioned at a high level. So that's kind of what we're thinking about. And then you had another question. Sorry, I completely forgot about it. So what was the second question?
The second question was where you see the biggest gaps currently in your business in terms of growth. I know you mentioned that you're mainly word of mouth,
Mhm.
but where else do you see some of your bigger gaps in terms of growth?
Yeah, I think the largest gap is going to be oversaturation of the market. There's a ton of creative people and software developers out there that can do a lot of what we do. And I'm happy for that. I'm glad to see our industry growing and people out there and doing what they're doing. I think one of the things that concerns me a lot about that, though, is quality level. When you get an oversaturation of a market, you get some people that are calling themselves an agency when they're just one person in their garage, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, like, that's how Apple started, right? But it's like, I trying to differentiate from the freelancers of the world to the agencies of the world is a challenge. And I think that's where, because the freelancers don't have overhead, they don't have something that they have to charge to make a profit. It's just basically equity or sweat equity for what they're getting paid. And so someone that comes to them for a website or an app could charge $15,000-$20,000 for a website, and then they come to an agency, and then it's like, okay, well, you're getting not just a designer, you're getting a designer, a developer, a project manager, you're getting an account manager, you're getting more for what you're paying for, but you're paying for more. And so that is a little bit difficult to kind of justify to some clients. They don't, because some don't care, they just want it done and whatever. And maybe that's not the clients that we want, but there's that. And then marketing for an agency is very difficult. I think email marketing doesn't really work very well. I mean, maybe for you guys, like, I've actually been on, I guess I'm going on 4 interviews now. But for you guys that you're interviewing us and asking us questions and putting our voice out there, I'm always opening up those and saying, yes, I definitely want to talk to you, because I think it's good to carry that conversation on for the creative world and in our line of business. And I think that's important, not just from a designer perspective or developer perspective, but for all of us. And so that, I think, works for you guys, especially for the media. I think it works really well. For us, it doesn't work well. We tried what's it called, Zoom Info, and I'm not trying to belittle their business or anything like that. I just, for the amount of money it costed, the return on investment was just not there for us, and that could have been our problem. I'm not a salesperson, but I can close a client because I know what I'm talking about when it comes to the product that we deliver. But just trying to throw it out there, like, just like fishing, it's just like throwing a hook out in the ether. You know how it is. So yeah, so I think, the biggest hurdles for us is like, how do we maintain that new business like flow in? And also, how are we going to redefine ourselves, over the years, and making sure that we're being optimal on the clients that we bring in, and also the products that we're delivering. And I think that's super important for us. So.
Yeah, it completely makes sense. I mean, I'm trying to read between the lines here and pinpoint exactly the pain point that you're experiencing here. And what I'm picking up is that it's kind of difficult to find your exact target group that would be able to be interested in a website, because yeah, sometimes they don't understand the value of hiring an agency unless they're experienced, unless it's a bigger company, and you want to reach out to those people that really know what they're doing, not only because you want to get paid, but also because you want to work with somebody that understands the value of hiring you. Is that kind of what I'm hearing here?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I mean, to kind of like, one of the things I've told some clients in the past when we first started, years ago, one of the things that we would include in our proposals is we would say, okay, here's what you would spend, salary wise, if you hired our team internally. And so we would do that comparison, that kind of that A/B comparison. And one of the things was, it's like, okay, so if you have a project manager or product manager, depending on how your infrastructure set up, you'd have them, you'd have somebody managing the project, you would have some kind of analyst where, that would be there. Then you would have, a designer, a developer, QA, anybody else that's involved in there. And we would do the list, and we would show salary points based on that. It was to be a range. And it'd say, okay, like if you're in the Midwest, it'd cost this. But if you're in Los Angeles or New York or San Francisco, it'd cost this. And you could see the disparagement between those two numbers. And then there would be a total at the bottom. And that total was always over like $1.5 million. Always. And even if in the Midwest. And then we would send out a proposal that was like $400 or $500 or $600,000, depending on the complexity. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer, and you still get all those positions. So, and people say, well, how are you able to afford these people? And then, over here, we can't afford them. And it's like, because I'm not working on just one project. I mean, we've got multiple projects that we're working on. And it is basically where it's how you spend that money across the way. So in other words, I could have a designer working on 3 projects. I could have a developer working on 2. I could have a project manager working on 6. So we spread that cost out, and it's cost effective for the client. And so that's when we bring the clients in and they show them numbers, and they get like, sticker shock. I try to, remind them, like, look, if you hired all these people like I have, this is what's going to cost you. So you're getting a deal, in other words. And I it kind of is something I wish people would kind of just stop and think about, like money and like how that works. It's like, seriously, and people that go, oh, you can go out to Fiverr and get a designer. It's like, okay, you're going to pay $5,000 for a designer for a web design. Does he care about your business? Is he looking at a roadmap? And basically, he's just a designer. Now you got to hire a developer. Now you got to hire a QA. Now you got to hire a project manager. I mean, if you really want a project done correctly, you got to go with an agency, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying freelancers are, not great. They are. We hire them all the time. We have contractors here at Bad Pixel, and we love them. But you still need those other pieces of the wheel, that spoke, that pie, because they're only fulfilling the design. And if you said, well, okay, now build it, they're going to look at you like you're crazy, because you are. It's like, so It really depends on the need of the client. Do they need a designer or do they need a team? And that's kind of where we come in. So, but yeah, I hope that answered
Absolutely.
that question. I don't know. So,
No, it absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, the whole fact that you have to go out and find, you mentioned hiring a designer, but hiring a designer is a huge process. The interviewing, the screening through, if it was Fiverr even, because on Fiverr you also have the quality issue to find a good designer or a developer, and you filter through, hundreds of candidates, and sometimes you have to hire them and test them out, and then you waste time, and in this case with somebody like you can just go start the project and then get the ball rolling right away. I
yeah, for
completely
sure.
agree. So how go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying for sure. I was agreeing with you.
Yes. So, looking into kind of like where you are at the moment, how important is it for you to build more strategic visibility right now? So whether that will be for your branding or for your company positioning or for just getting your story out there more clearly to ideal partners and clients, is that something that you're looking into?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, and I think I mentioned this earlier. I've kind of been on meetings all day, so forgive me. But I think one of the things that we're in the process of right now that I'm really excited about is the new website that we're working on, and it's going to have case studies on it. Right now, we just kind of give like updates, like little news blips. Um, so it's definitely on our radar to expand over the summer. Over the years, one of the things I've noticed, and this might be something that's interesting to to you and also your viewership, is that I've started noticing trends over a year as far as when we're getting a lot of work in and when we're not. And so what we usually see is like Q1 is usually about everybody's coming back from the holiday and they're like, okay, let's meet internally. Let's get our, everything that we need to get done for the year, our initiatives. Let's get those locked in. Let's get those approved. Let's get budgets in place. And then in Q2 is when everything just goes, whoop, and everybody's like ready to go. And so that's like a really big growth cycle. Like, we're coming into Q3. Q3, I think, is still a growth cycle. I think it's where businesses are looking at growing. So I'm definitely interested, to answer your question directly. I'm definitely interested in growing our, footprint and also bringing in more clients. And then I also know that Q4 is all about finishing up what you started in Q2 and Q3. There's usually no like new business in Q4, at least in my experience. There might be other agencies out there disagree. I'm happy to listen to their experiences. I'd love to see how they did. But usually it's, Q2 starts it, Q4 finishes it if it's a big project, and that's usually what we try to sink our teeth into. Usually we try to be done by the end of Q3 and going in like once we get close to Thanksgiving here in America, then I lose, almost 100% of my team for a week. So, and then when you get into the, depending on what you celebrate, you celebrate everything you want. I have no stake in that game, but Christmas time for me, Christmas and New Year's, pretty much a lot of my team they're gone for half that month. So you basically can take November and December here in America and smash them together, and that's 1 month. And it's not a good month either because everybody's in holiday mode. They're already kind of checking out. They're like, whatever. I mean, we still get stuff done, but I think everybody's like, okay, you know what? We don't be like under the gun right on Christmas Eve or whatever, whatever, Hanukkah or whatever. You don't want to be like thinking about those things. And you want to be like with whoever you want to be with, even if that's what's with yourself. And so we just recognized that. And we had the first 2 years we started, we were delivering big like launches like January 1, and we'll never do that again. I'm just not doing it. So
Wow.
anyway, another long-winded answer, but I think hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah.
absolutely. And I do want to dig into that a little bit more if you're comfortable sharing.
Mhm.
You say that there might be inconsistency through your workload, but also through how your team is working. Is that also true for your lead generations? Like, do you see a difference between how many potential clients you get in January or February or between Q1 and Q2? And do you have any numbers on approximately how many? Well, I understand it's mostly word of mouth, but how many of those you can get in a month or in a quarter?
Yeah, I mean, as far as new clients, we usually get them at the end of January, early February. We start seeing kind of an uptick. Again, it's mostly through referral, or they've seen a post on social media that we did, like something. But I would say that most of it is through referrals. And, as far as processes go, our sales, we don't really have like a sales process that we've kind of formalized. Now our project management process is ironclad, in my opinion. And we built a really solid PMO to work on all these projects a few years ago. And um it's pretty great. I think a lot of clients are always really impressed when we talk about, we show them the proposal, and then we show them, what we're going to do and the project plan. And usually that's pretty awesome. But the counterpoint to that is our sales process is not, because we've mainly relied on the referral business. And somebody was like, I mean, we got a lead in the other day, and he was like, hey, I saw, that post that you guys did on Instagram, and really love the work. I'd love to set up some time to talk to you. And they turned into a client. And
Okay.
so something like that is kind of mostly our marketing piece. But you know, a lot of people think just because you're an agency, you're a marketing agency. It's like, that's really not what we do. We're a software development agency.
Yeah.
We have a partnership with a marketing agency that we can utilize if needed. Um, and we just haven't really engaged them to do that because we've just been heads down focused on software, and, we've been really slammed. I mean, I would love to get at least two more like medium to large clients in before the end of the year. That would be, and I don't think that's undoable. I mean, with all the work we're doing. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's doable. And you were talking about partnerships, and I did want to ask a question regarding that. And it's like, when it does come to building or scaling teams to help drive growth, um, do you prefer doing most things yourself, or are you more focused on finding the right partners and systems to take things off your plate? I guess this is also related to what your daily workload looks like throughout the year.
Yeah, no, actually, you're the second person today to ask me that question. So,
Mhm.
or something similar to that question.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, my daily, like my daily task list is, if we have leads in, setting up those meetings, talking to those people, putting proposals together, um, also doing you know, basically like flow charts, user diagrams, things like that. Like, in other words, designing the software that we're going to be presenting. And I'm not talking about like actually the UI. I'm talking about the flows and the UX of it all. So that's something I do. I also do working sessions with all of our design team and dev team. So I'm giving them feedback more in a director role. So I'm not pushing the pixels around myself, but I'm like looking at what they've done, giving them feedback, things like that. As far as sales go, I mean, I think I'm not really a salesy person. And I know that sounds like a negative, I guess, but but I can close deals. If the lead comes in, I'm pretty confident in my ability to present what we do, present how it helps the client, and making sure that they get a value out of our service, and wanting them to be, partnered with us as their agency. So I think I can do all of that, and that's really what I do. But as far as getting that lead from, out here in the ether into the sales funnel, other than social media and then what we kind of are loud and proud about and like banging the drum on social media or even our website, because again, like I said, uh, email marketing doesn't work for us, or it hasn't in the past. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. But, and then also just meet and greets. Like we're part of the Austin Chamber of Commerce. So we go to all the meetings and shake hands. Although there are a lot of agencies here in Austin. So, it's kind of like shaking hands with your enemy. But anyway, but they're nice people. I'm just being silly. But yeah, I mean, as far as lead funnels, I'm open to suggestions and things like that. But really, we just keep our head down and just keep working day to day and kind of hope for that referral come in. So
So if I dig a little bit deeper there, if you could wave a magic wand in terms of that growth aspect and get everything done. I know you mentioned no lead gen. I mean, that's something you want to point out. If yeah, again, I'll leave it open ended. If you could wave a magic wand to help out growth in your company, what would you do?
I mean, yeah, I mean, if I could do that, and that'd be great. I mean, if we could get, like I said, 2 to 4 clients in a year that are, I mean, now keep in mind, you got to talk about scale. I'm not talking about 4 mom and pop shops. I'm talking about 2 enterprise clients a year, or maybe 2 to 4, and half of those are medium sized clients, because you can't run an agency on $20,000 websites. So just anybody that thinks that, it's fine. That's good for them, and if they're making it successful, that's great. But that's not who we are. So
Exactly. Yeah. So, with that being said, one thing we really love about the leaders that we interview is that they're usually really open to new ways of solving old problems. So, how do you personally approach finding new strategies or partners to help drive growth in your business?
in my business or theirs?
In your business.
In my business. Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's an interesting question, because I've been so focused on, just the day to day. I haven't really focused on growth, other than trying what I've told you, when we did with the email marketing platforms, and also, social media, website, stuff like that, talking to people, interviews like this podcast. I've been on a few now. And so that's kind of the growth strategy I've got. And I think, to kind of harken back to some of the things I said earlier, is that, you know, what we really want is for our like work to speak for itself. We're not there to kind of say, okay, we are the 100% best, and I'll use medical industry, best medical agency ever. We're not out there saying, we're number one. So, even though maybe that might help, that might be worth doing. I don't know. But I think one of the things that I like is that when we get projects in that are big, like the media projects I've told you about, is really just doing a great job and letting those speak for themselves, and then us talking about that, maybe going on podcasts like this and doing it, maybe a post on LinkedIn, on Instagram, Facebook, if people are following it. So I think that is really kind of what I would say is that. But as far as like a strategy, I mean, other than those things, I really haven't thought of anything outside the box. I mean, maybe that should be something I'm thinking about. But we've been so busy lately. It's been kind of like, okay, I'm focused on where we are right now and focused on growing my client's business. That's why I asked that question at the beginning of that. Is I'm so focused on growing their business, because if they're growing, then we're growing. But I haven't really been saying, okay, we need a growth strategy. And maybe it's good that I haven't thought about that, because that means that we're in trouble. First of all, I was like, oh my God, as soon as this client's done, we're done. I said, I don't want that to happen. But I do think we need one. I think we do need a growth strategy, just like we present to our clients. But our growth strategy is through, their software and what the features they have and how they stand out in their industry. And they're not just the same old, cookie cutter website. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's a very interesting question. And it's making me think that maybe we do need to start thinking more about that. So,
And that's completely fine. We hear founders talk about this all the time, and it's wonderful to hear that you're not in a that you're in a good place. And I mean, patience is virtue, and maybe you're just waiting for the right opportunity. And you know, serendipitous moments happen all the time. I mean, you're talking to a growth person right now, and when that opportunity comes and when you're in need, I'm sure you will get there. And yeah, I'm a big believer in law of attraction, so that's a huge part of it. Your problems will always be solved. I have no doubt of that. And uh, yeah, as a closing question, I would love to hear if there was something that I didn't ask that you had on your mind that you would like to share before we wrap up.
Hmm. Interesting. No, I think from my point of view, it's basically just to let people know about Bad Pixel and where we are. You can just find us at badpixel.com. And I think it's one of those things where if you have a project that you are trying to source an agency for, or a freelancer or a contractor for, and you feel like you need a team instead of an individual, definitely reach out to us. You can schedule anything on, through our website. But also, I would just say that, when you hire us as a team, we're going to be that team that helps you solve and grow your business. And one thing I would say is, you know, I think one of the unique things about us is we approach it from a product design, and product management perspective, and we become that product agency for you, and basically making that roadmap that you are probably maybe have thought about. Maybe you've got a roadmap, maybe you haven't. If you don't, it's fine. We can help you build it. One of the things also that we do that I think is really great is when we do our competitive analysis within your industry, we also do it outside of your industry, ancillary, industries that could possibly have technology that you haven't thought about yet. So when we go to do your proposal, one of the things that I think is really important is it's like, okay, I'm an apparel company and I have zero ties to the travel industry. But what if you were to have a feature that was part of the travel industry, like an adventure travel? If you're like an apparel company that basically sells outdoor wear, or any kind of active wear, and then you marry those two things together on your website and you didn't even think about it. It's like, so things like that I think is really important. When you come to Bad Pixel, what we do is we look at, are there opportunities that you're missing because you're just playing it safe and you're just saying, I just need to be able to transact online and sell, yoga pants, or sell, a snow, jacket, whatever it is, toboggan, whatever that is. But what about, are you're not seeing or not thinking about? And also, there's other industries out there that are doing things really greatly on their user experience, on their websites, on their apps, and maybe apply to yours. And so we do a lot of that research. We do a lot of that, kind of that suggestions. So when you come to us for a proposal, the one thing I would say is you're going to get more than you bargained for. And, we do that. And I think that's really important. So, I mean, I know that's kind of sounds a little salesy, but it's the truth. That's how we conduct our business. So, but yeah.
Wonderful. Well, now that everybody knows, Christopher Clarke at backpixel.com. That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your insight.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm sorry if I'm a little bit long winded, but I like to talk. So,
That's the whole point. You did great. Thank you so
cool.
much and have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks so much.